Welcome today. Thanks for coming. And thank you for coming as well. See, this is a story time, and they love to hear this story because this is really all about their family. And they love to hear this story every time they can. But I thought that you might enjoy this story too, because it's a story about teddy bears. And you might understand teddy bears. You might even have a teddy bear or two at home. But if you think about it, I bet you can't really tell me why you have teddy bears. Why don't you have an Archibald bear or an Ethel bear? Anybody have a Quentin bear at home? Probably not. And why bears anyway, huh? No offense, fellas, but why doesn't somebody have a teddy armadillo or a teddy squid? Wouldn't it be neat to have a teddy mosquito? Okay, that'd just be crazy. That wouldn't be so good. But there's actually a reason why they're called teddy and a reason why they're bears. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And it actually is also going to have a special guest appearance by a president of the United States. So wait and see if you can spot him. Okay, you ready? Pay attention now. Okay, our book today is going to be The Legend of the Teddy Bear. This is the book you've all been waiting for. Okay, calm down. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it right now. Look at this great artwork here. Now, let's get started. In the days when America was a younger country, and much of the land was filled with dense green forests, animals roamed freely through the great American wilderness. But in the cities, the clip-clop of horses' feet could be heard as they pulled big black buggies through bustling streets. Smoking black trains rolled across the countryside, connecting cities and towns to prairies and forests, moving travelers across the wild territories of America. In those days, there lived a strong, adventurous man with a big bushy mustache. It's not me. He was the President of the United States of America, and his name was Theodore Roosevelt. The people of America adored their president, and they fondly called him Teddy. Teddy Roosevelt loved adventures. He loved to go exploring while riding on his horse Manitou. Teddy wandered through the wooded valleys of Pennsylvania and climbed the towering peaks of the Colorado Rockies. He roamed the sweeping green prairies, marveling at nature's beauty. But one of the things Teddy loved to do the most was camp in the wide open spaces of America and fall asleep under a blanket of 1,000 twinkling stars. Teddy often rode on Manitou while hunting wild animals. In those days, many Americans hunted deer and bears. Calm down. But Teddy loved hunting too. And during one trip, Teddy traveled to the states of Mississippi and Louisiana. The two states wanted this great and fair man to settle an argument about a boundary line. When his work was done, he decided to explore the green forests of Mississippi and to go bear hunting. I know you're not happy about that, but that's what he did. Late in the day on November 14th of 1902, as the sun was setting, some of the men in the president's group cornered a young bear. Barking dogs surrounded the frightened bear as the men roped it up and tied it to a tree. One of the men cried out, "President Roosevelt, come quick! We have a bear for you!" Poor bear. Poor bear. Branches cracked and twigs snapped as President Roosevelt raced Manitou through the thick forest. Hearing the excited voices of his men, he reached a clearing where the men and barking dogs were gathered. All were pointing at a bear that had been roped and tied to a tree. The frightened bear clawed at the rope, trying to free itself. The bear whipped his head back and forth. Its back feet kicked up clouds of dust and dirt. Teddy Roosevelt looked down at his rifle and then laid it on the ground. He shouted out to his men, "Stop badgering that bear. It's helpless. Let it go." Following the president's orders, the men cut the rope and let the bear go free. Yay! Yay! This guy's a very important part of the story. A few days later, a newspaper cartoonist named Clifford Berryman heard about the president's meeting with the bear. He drew a cartoon illustrating President Roosevelt and a wild bear. The cartoon first appeared in a newspaper called the Washington Post. People everywhere were talking about how the president had ordered his men to let a wild bear go free. Soon the cartoon appeared in newspapers all over the country. People from New York to Michigan to California saw the cartoon and read about Teddy's kindness toward the defenseless bear. The nation's love for their president grew even stronger. A couple from New York, Rose and Morris Mickham, saw the cartoon while reading their morning newspaper. And like so many other people of America, were touched by what President Roosevelt had done. Rose and Morris owned a candy shop. They loved having children visit their shop. Big glass jars stuffed full of brightly colored candy lined the shelves. The smell of peppermint and lemon drops and licorice sticks filled the air. There were shelves filled with porcelain dolls, shelves with wooden toy soldiers, shelves with wind-up toy trains. Rose and Morris talked about their president's kindness. As they prepared to open their candy shop that morning, as they talked about the bear in the cartoon, an idea for a new toy was born. Rose and Morris thought children might like a soft, cuddly toy, something a child could squeeze and hug while drifting off to sleep. They decided to make a stuffed toy bear. Rose and Morris both agreed that a soft, furry material the color of golden honey would be perfect. Morris skillfully cut out the patterns for each little limb and paw. He cut out patterns in the shape of a bear's head and body, and then handed them to Rose. Rose always enjoyed sewing and sat quietly humming as she sewed the pieces together. She tenderly filled each part of the bear with fluffy stuffing. Each limb was attached to the body with a special metal wheel. It was hidden under the golden fur. Just like a real bear, this toy bear's legs could move. Rose gently held the little bear's paw as she checked to see that each little limb moved up and down and all the way around. Next, Rose used shiny black boot buttons for the eyes. As she delicately sewed black thread into the honey fur, forming a little nose and mouth, Rose's eyes sparkled, just like the boot button eyes of her new little bear. Rose nuzzled her face against the golden honey fur and thought, "You little bear will make a child very, very happy." The next morning, Rose awoke early and began to make another toy bear. As she sat touching the soft fur, Rose imagined how wonderful it would be if all the children in the world could have their own special bear. Rose and Morris excitedly placed the two stuffed bears in the front window of their candy shop. They smiled proudly at their two golden-colored bears as people passing by stopped and admired their new creations. The little bears didn't sit very long in the candy shop window, though. Before the end of the day, both bears had a new home. When Morris was closing up the candy store that evening, he suddenly realized they needed a name for their toy bears. What would be a good name? Teddy's Bear, he thought. Morris wondered if their adventurous president would mind if they named their toy bears Teddy's Bear. Morris thought the proper thing to do would be to ask the president if he minded, so he decided to write him a letter. In the letter, Morris told the president how Mr. Berryman's cartoon inspired him and his wife to create two toy bears,
and how the children loved them. Morris told them how they were going to make more soft, cuddly bears, but they needed a name for them. Morris asked the president if they could use his name. While Morris was writing the letter, Rose began making another bear to escort the letter to the White House. Stitch by stitch, Rose carefully sewed the bear. While she was stitching the little bear, Morris thought of something. "Rose, I believe our little messenger should dress up for such an important trip." Morris thought a vest would be very proper for a White House visit, and Rose agreed. Rose cut out and sewed a little leather vest. Next, she slipped the fancy vest onto the bear's little body. Then she fastened a small gold chain from one vest pocket to a buttonhole. It looked like the bear was wearing a pocket watch, just like President Roosevelt. Now the little bear looked ready for the White House. Their hearts and minds filled with excitement as they gingerly placed the little bear and the letter into a box. Rose and Morris addressed the package to President Theodore Roosevelt, the White House, Washington, D.C. Rose and Morris worried that a busy man like the President of the United States wouldn't have time to answer a letter about a toy bear. Day after day, week after week, Rose and Morris waited for a reply. They eagerly searched their mail for a letter from the President. Finally, one day they received an envelope from the White House. Morris's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Rose's heart pounded. Inside they found a handwritten letter from President Roosevelt. Nervously, Morris read the letter out loud. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Mictum, I warmly thank you for your letter and the fine stuffed bear you made. I can hardly wait to show my children. However, I don't think my name is likely to be worth much in the toy bear business. But you're welcome to use it. I wish you great luck with your toy bear business. Sincerely, Theodore Roosevelt." The President loved the little bear, and he approved of the name. Thereafter, Rose and Morris proudly named each bear Teddy's Bear. It wasn't long before little girls and boys were enjoying their very first stuffed bears, made with love by Rose and Morris in honor of a great president. Millions and millions of children all over the world have since held on tightly to their teddy bears. A teddy bear is a trusted, faithful, and timeless friend whose dedication is always ready and never ending. Don't you think that sounds like you? I think that sounds like you. So what do you think? Did you enjoy the story? I hope you enjoyed the story too.